This is a 4-part video series that offers a general guide for writing a successful grant application and hopefully provides your organization with the tools to be more equipped for applying for and receiving future grant opportunities. In this video, we cover common errors and grant tips, which is part 3 of the 4-part series. First and foremost, as mentioned before, please assume the grant review panel or reviewers know absolutely nothing about your agency or proposed initiative. Provide the necessary context within your application to communicate what your agency's mandate is, what program you are proposing, and how these intersect with the objective of the funding. Second, you should ensure you are referring to the evaluation matrix if one is provided. This will help guide your answers to maximize your score. If one is not provided, contact the funders and ask if they would release it. In some cases, they do. Thirdly, make sure you are making the case that your proposed program is strongly aligned with the objective of the grant program. Reviewers should have a clear understanding of why you are applying for this funding and should be satisfied that it meets the objectives of the grant. Next, you should ask yourself, is this grant being used to mobilize a strategy or plan? If the answer is yes, make sure you are very familiar with those documents. Reference the plan or strategy within your application, paying special attention to the priority areas that were identified. Finally, prior to submission, make sure you complete a final spelling and grammar check. Poorly structured sentences and spelling mistakes can be distracting for reviewers and can move the attention away from your quality content. Continuing with some tips, try to be succinct and clear. Limit the use of extra words if you're able to. It can be helpful to have someone else read over your application and omit words and sentences that are not needed. Additionally, try to avoid using acronyms as it can be confusing for reviewers. Remember, the review panel may be reviewing many applications and can be easily confused by any acronyms, even if they are common knowledge in your sector. Another way to increase clarity is to, wherever possible, use bullet points or numbers. This makes your application easier to read for reviewers and draws their attention to the most important parts. Just like in a cover letter or resume, you want to communicate the most important parts to the reader. Your application can collaborate or partner with other agencies. This can include going in on an application together or leveraging in-kind support to bring down the overall budget of your proposed program. Ensure to include letters of support to show established partnerships, paying attention to the preferred file type. Reviewers cannot score you on a letter that they cannot open. This goes for any files that you are uploading. Within the letter, make sure to be specific about what support will look like from this partner, as this will act as commitment from that agency to support your proposed program in the way specified. It shows the reviewers that you have been purposeful and thoughtful about partnerships and speaks to the readiness of your program for easy implementation. Some other best practices to consider: review the insurance requirements prior to grant application submission. Some funders will require special insurance that goes above and beyond your agency's current coverage. It's a good opportunity to assess whether the grant is suitable if it requires you to purchase additional coverage. Alternatively, you can give your broker a heads up and start preparing the certificate of insurance ahead of time. This can save you time during the contract execution phase. Be aware that some funders will require you to provide a certificate of insurance on their forms. For example, Niagara Region requires this. This will be talked about more in the coming slides. This goes without saying, but try to finish early and give yourself some leeway for potential technical difficulties. Application deadlines are normally firm, and you want to make sure your application is submitted in a correct format by the closing date. In the event that the staff member completing the application goes on vacation, is ill, or is away from the office for any other reason, ensure to provide an alternate contact. Funders may also reach out so many times before they have to move on to the next successful applicant. Keep your application in scope. Your agencies do so much great work, but try to keep your application to what is relevant for this specific grant program. In saying that, including relevant past successes can position your agency as both ready and capable to deliver the proposed program. Lastly, when appropriate, use voices of lived expertise to enhance your application. This shows that your proposed program has been thoughtful and informed with lived experts collaborate. Once your grant has been accepted and negotiations have finished, you will now enter into a funding agreement with the funder. In our experience, this can actually be what holds up agencies from receiving funds quickly. We're going to spend some time going over what these funding agreements look like here at the region and our process for executing those agreements. Most funders will go through a similar process. The most common documents that are required to enter into funding agreements with the region include 3 original signed copies of the funding agreement. These must be wet signatures, signed by an individual authorized to bind the corporation, and it must be the same person on all 3 copies. A certificate of insurance, which we're going to look at on the next slide. WSIB confirmation if required. And finally, an auto liability waiver letter, once again, if required. As a tip, if you're able to drop off or arrange for pickup for these documents, this can expedite the process. All COIs, otherwise known as a certificate of insurance, must be completed on a regionally provided form as shown here. Here are a few flags for you as you're getting your insurance brokers to fill these out. Be sure to check with the funder to make sure that the project title is correct. They will tell you exactly what to write if it has not been pre-filled out for you. As shown here, the project title highlighted is the Building Safer Communities Grant Program. At the bottom of the first page, as shown here, are specific coverage checkboxes. Please ensure that the No Sexual Abuse or Molestation Exclusion box has been checked. Additionally, please provide limit specifications underneath in the Other section. On the second page is the auto liability policy information. Please note that if your agency owns or leases a vehicle, you must provide the insurance details here. This needs to be done regardless of whether or not that vehicle will be used directly for the proposed program. If you do not have an owned or leased vehicle, you can leave this part blank. In the event that your agency does not own or lease any vehicles, you will be asked to provide a vehicle liability letter on your agency letterhead, signed by someone who has the authority to bind the corporation. Please see here the template that can be used to follow when submitting those letters. Additionally, please reach out to your funder to receive specific instructions or request a template. The COI, along with other forms that you may or may not need, can be found on the Niagara Region website, or shown here. This concludes part 3 of the granting series. The next section will cover grant opportunities. If you need this information in another format, please call the Niagara Region at 905-980-6000. For more information, please visit niagararegion.ca.